Was Zebec acquiring some of its acquisitions a good idea? Well, in today's video, I'm going to talk about that. And also later on, I'm going to talk about a hypothetical 10-cent type of mindset that I have for ZBCN, even though nothing I say is financial advice. What do I mean by its acquisitions? Now, most notably, Zebec acquired something called GateKnox. Now, when it comes to GateKnox, I actually think this is a good idea personally for me because if we take a look at it, GateKnox allegedly is bringing AI-powered KYC to Web3. KYC stands for Know Your Customer, and keep in mind, the KYC market is predicted to reach nearly $14.5 billion by 2030, according to Mordor Intelligence. So I don't think it's that bad. Not to mention, when I take a look at GateKnox, there is an aspect of something called a ZK-proof identity. Now, why does this even matter? It's because ZK stands for something called zero knowledge. And let me explain why I think this could hypothetically be, a pretty good thing. It's because the benefit of zero knowledge technology is, for instance, allowing for greater scalability and enhancing privacy. So I think that's a very unique touch. Not to mention, I think just being focused on, compliance in general, I think is a good idea. And that is exactly what I think Zebec did by acquiring GateKnox, because GateKnox is also heavily focused on compliance, which I think is, again, a good touch, especially for a project that's looking for longevity, in my opinion, which I think Zebec arguably is. Not to mention, the founder of, GateKnox, he's allegedly working towards ISO 20022 compliance when it comes to Zebec. I think it's a big deal because if, let's say, he does achieve his mission, so to speak, I think this could be great in terms of giving more validity to Zebec because we do see aspects of that. Again, ISO 20022 for Ripple, for Stellar. So I think something like this would really make a big difference when it comes to Zebec. Keep in mind, ISO 20022, that is currently being used by many financial institutions out there all around the world for inter-organizational data exchange. So I think, again, it's very popular, it's very well known. And again, a lot of these projects, even some of these projects that aren't really even focused on, the payments or global trade and finance market, I would arguably say, like in the grand scheme of things, something like Algorand, even that has an aspect of ISO 20022. So something like Zebec, which is heavily focused on those markets like global trade and finance, the payments market, I don't see why, hypothetically, maybe it wouldn't be able to achieve something like that. But again, only time will tell. But if anything, I think Zebec did a good idea by acquiring GateKnox. Now, when it comes to another acquisition they had is something called Science Card UK. They're focused on education through that, which also I think is a pretty good idea because, for instance, if we take a look at Science Card UK, their aim allegedly is to bring innovation to campus spending, research grants, and budgeting for universities across the UK. So yeah, I think that's pretty impressive. I mean, keep in mind, the UK higher education sector's total economic impact of £265 billion was recorded for the 2021 to 2022 academic year. And again, that's £265 billion. I'm not talking about dollars. I mean, just wow. So when I take a look at Zebec, I get it. It may not be the biggest project out there, but I like their acquisitions. I don't think it's that bad. Now we have to take a look at XRP as of right now, right? I mean, it's done very well. Market cap is very massive. But hypothetically, if I think about it logically, can that do like a 10x from here? In the next 6 to 10 months? I wouldn't really be too confident in something like that. This is just my perspective. I mean, let's say ZBCN went to the price of 10 cents, around a 30x from here. Even if we divide that by 3, 10x, I mean, I don't know if XRP could do that in the next 6 to 10 months. This is just my perspective. So, personally, for me, I just don't really know why I would allocate more towards something like that as opposed to ZBCN, which arguably, in my opinion, I would just find it more interesting to me, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything when it comes to ZBCN. And also, 10 cents, considering current circulating supply is around a $9 billion market cap. I mean, 9 billion, let's just think about this, right? BNB reached over 100 billion back in 2021. XRP is well beyond 100 billion as of right now. Not to mention, Dogecoin reached over 80 billion back in 2021. And we take a look at Shiba Inu back in 2021, reached around 40 billion. Is this too much to ask for? Now, that's debatable, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem that massive to me. Now, ZBCN hypothetically, to go to the price of 10 cents, let's say in a make-believe scenario, needed like a $100 billion market cap or 200 billion. That's totally out of the question. Even like 50 billion or something like that. I don't know if ZBCN could do that hypothetically this cycle, but even besides that point, this doesn't seem that outlandish to me. The market cap isn't something that is like never been achieved before. It doesn't seem that impossible, at least in my perspective. However, again, only time will tell. Now, let's not forget, when it comes to Zebec, I think sometimes people like to think, oh, this is a project that people are going to forget about. But I think as Solana gains more reputation, as something like Circle gains more reputation in terms of the popularity, I think also it could indirectly somewhat benefit someone like Zebec, because we have to think about how when it comes to Circle, they're very massive, publicly listed. They're the creator of USDC. They're one of the backers when it comes to Zebec, and allegedly they do hold a significant amount, supposedly, when it comes to ZBCN. Not to mention Solana Ventures, one of the backers as well when it comes to something like Zebec. So the way to take a look at it is that if Solana gains more popularity, if Circle gains more popularity, could some of it maybe trickle down to Zebec? That would not surprise me. Now, let's not forget as well, when it comes to Zebec, I think oftentimes people kind of, I would say, undervalue its like focus towards something like RWAs, which I think is actually a narrative that is pretty impressive. We have to take a look at Ondo, a very massive project that's heavily focused on real world assets, which is what RWA stands for. And I think RWA tokenization, I think, could hypothetically be something so revolutionary. I mean, if we take a look at RWA tokens, they're digital representations of physical assets on the blockchain. And these market sectors could, for instance, be for real estate, art, bonds, stocks. I mean, there's a bunch of possibilities allegedly, so I think that is very unique as well. And the way you take a look at it is this. Back in the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners. Now, allegedly, there's over 600 million. I mean, we got to think about that. That's pretty much double. Not to mention, if that altcoin season really kicks into fifth gear, man, I am going to still be believing in Zebec, because the way you take a look at it was that ZBCN has kind of proved historically that even though the market at that time wasn't doing the best, in my opinion, and also even though at that time there wasn't really much hype when it comes to altcoins, it still did that. So the way you take a look at it was that if, let's say, Bitcoin goes to 200 grand, maybe hypothetically 300 grand, what would ZBCN look like then if, let's say, we do see a fully fledged type of altcoin season? This is the way you take a look at it. So when it comes to 10 cents, again, I mean, there's no guarantees when it comes to that, but I am going to still be dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting, because I think Zebec ticks the boxes for a project that I'm looking for. A market cap that isn't way too massive, but it's not too small either, has a good community, has good exchange listings, fundamentally fantastic, and also on top of that, I think has a good track record in terms of what they're actually doing fundamentally. So the way you take a look at it is that I don't want to give up. I'm going to stay patient, and feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.